When I first met Sophie, it felt like life had finally fallen into place. I'd spent years building my career, investing wisely, and buying my own house. All I wanted was someone to share it with. And Sophie seemed perfect. Beautiful, intelligent, and full of life. She had an air of sophistication and ambition that I admired. The way she talked about her goals in public relations made her seem like someone who had the world at her feet. Little did I know, she had a darker side, one that I'd soon discover. We had been together for nearly 2 years, and over time, Sophie's presence became as much a part of my home as the furniture itself. She moved in gradually, first with a drawer, then a closet section, and soon she was living with me full time. It didn't bother me. I wanted her there, and I thought we were building a future together. She even hinted at marriage, dropping subtle comments about our life together and our future. I thought she meant it. The first signs of trouble appeared in whispers, subtle and easily brushed aside. Occasionally, Sophie would ask questions about my finances, under the guise of helping us plan. She'd say things like, if we're going to build a future, we should be open about everything. So I trusted her. She knew about my savings, the investments I'd made, and even how I had structured the mortgage payments on the house. I never thought she'd use this information against me. One night I came home to an empty house. There was no note, no text, nothing. Sophie was gone, but she'd left traces, empty closets, missing valuables, and an unmistakable emptiness that left me feeling hollow. At first I was more worried than angry, thinking something had happened to her, but as I looked closer, I found other, more disturbing signs. My banking details were missing, and every financial document I'd ever shared with her had disappeared. I tried calling her, but the number was disconnected. Panic set in, but it quickly turned to disbelief when I noticed that my bank account had been drained. Nearly every penny was gone. It took days of piecing things together, but I finally understood what had happened. She had taken everything, my money, my house, and my dignity. It turns out she'd used the information I trusted her with to forge documents and transfer the title of the house into her name. Through some manipulative magic, she'd made it look like I'd signed everything over willingly. And just like that, everything I'd worked for was gone. The shock wore off, replaced by a slow burning anger. The betrayal was so deep, so calculated, that I couldn't just let it go. I wanted her to pay, not only for what she'd done to me, but for the trust she'd shattered. I decided that if she could steal from me without a second thought, I'd take something even more precious from her career and reputation. I knew enough about Sophie's job to know how important her image was. She worked in public relations, managing brand images, smoothing over controversies, and handling delicate matters for her clients. Her reputation was everything in that world, and I intended to rip it apart. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective, uncovering every piece of information I could find about her work. From our time together, I knew a few of her clients and even some of her colleagues. She'd often boasted about how she had dirt on certain high-profile clients to keep them in line, a fact that I now intended to use against her. The first step was to compile all the information I had on her. I found incriminating emails, messages she'd sent me bragging about manipulating clients, and a few receipts showing shady expenses she'd written off as business costs. Then I reached out anonymously to some of her biggest clients. I let them know subtly about Sophie's unprofessional practices, how she'd talked openly about their private dealings, and even manipulated a few campaigns to her advantage. It wasn't long before word started spreading in her professional circles. Clients began dropping her, unwilling to risk their reputation with someone who was a liability. I knew I'd hit a nerve when I saw a social media post from one of her former clients, hinting at a betrayal of trust without naming names. I couldn't help but smile. This was only the beginning. I went further, reaching out to people she'd wronged in the past. I found an old colleague of hers who was more than willing to share stories of Sophie's backstabbing antics. Together, we compiled enough dirt to ruin any chance she had of finding reputable work in the industry again. I fed this information through anonymous accounts, using every online forum I could find, until her reputation was in tatters. Within months, her career had crumbled. She'd gone from a rising star to a pariah, blacklisted by almost every client and agency she'd ever worked with. And it didn't stop there. Sophie's personal life began to unravel as well. Friends distanced themselves, fearing association with her damaged reputation. She was alone, without the network she'd so carefully cultivated over the years. In the end, she tried to contact me, leaving desperate voicemails apologizing, pleading for forgiveness, and begging me to stop. But it was too late. I didn't return her calls, didn't acknowledge her existence. She'd taken everything I'd worked for, thinking I'd simply accept defeat. But she hadn't counted on my resolve, nor my willingness to fight back. Destroying her reputation didn't bring back my money or my house, but in a strange way, it brought me closure. I'd taken back some of the power she'd stolen, and with that, I found a path to move forward. There were still pieces to pick up, a new life to rebuild, but I'd learned a hard lesson about trust and resilience.